What's up, folks? Welcome to another episode of The Zoom. I'm your host, DJ CEO. As always, I appreciate your time and your presence. The Zoom, for those of you who are watching for the first time, is a show about culture at large, but with a heavy focus on Black culture, but not just, stories. We try to get into purposes and missions and the drive that a lot of our guests have that have helped them to become successful. And in that, we're going to learn a lot not just about them, but the culture at large. Today's guest is a long time friend of mine, Brooklyn native, an outstanding comic. May have seen her on the Jimmy Fallon Show, Comedy Central. She's all over the place right now. And she has a brand new book out that we're going to discuss at some point in this interview. Please welcome my good friend, Chloe Hilliard. Chloe, what's happening?
What's up? What's up? How are you? It's always hard for me when I address you. It's like, do I say DJ CEO or Jarrell? Because I've known you forever. I'm like, hey, what up? How you doing? What's good?
I've had plenty of my friends just totally disregard my professional name and just refer to me as Jarrell in the interview. It's cool. It's whatever. We're friends. We're friends. That's all. So what's happening? Tell me what's going on in your world, especially during these crazy times. How you been?
Yeah, man, I'm actually good. I mean, I hate to say it. Like, I have to say, all things considered, I'm good. And I would say when I think about like answering that question, like how am I doing? It's like, well, my immediate family is healthy. We haven't had any fatalities because of COVID-19, so I'm very grateful for that. We're starting to finally come out of being so isolated. So I'm now able to go visit my folks. I don't go to the house, but we'll step outside because I have an elderly grandmother. She's 90 years old, so she's very vulnerable. So I'm still thinking about it, even though I do feel like people around me, not my family, but some of my family, but like neighbors and people that I see in New York just are forgetting that we just haven't even finished the pandemic. So there's that kind of like little level of like, I'm grateful, but I'm still very cautious. And then now with everything that's happening with this uprising, I hope we start calling it that because that's what it is.
Mm-hmm.
And it's bigger than just, the brutal murder of George Floyd. It's bigger than Breonna. It's bigger than Ahmaud. It's bigger than everything. It's a total combination of 60 plus years of repressed emotion and rage and tired of being killed. So thinking about the uprising, it's like, well, now because of Corona, I'm home. I'm not traveling. I'm not performing. And I have time. So now I'm thinking like, well, how can I effectively give my time and my skill set to this uprising? And so I'm just thinking of ways that I can be useful of service because I don't want to miss this opportunity to really make a change happen. And I know a lot of times we like to think about like, well, what does it matter if I sit out? And so if you think that one person doesn't sway an outcome, if 100 or 100,000 or 1,000,000 people think that, then it sways the outcome. So I'm trying to be mindful of how I can contribute. What does that mean? What does that look like? What am I comfortable doing? What am I not comfortable doing? Maybe I need to like, push myself. Why would I be uncomfortable? So it's just a lot of inner reflection because, I'm still in the house. I'm in the house.
In the house, but you're not in the house bored because you are able to kind of to self-reflect and kind of just take everything in and not.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's impossible for you to ignore what's going on. This stuff that's going on involves you and people that looks like you. So it's not, you don't have that privilege to ignore, what's happening right now. So.
No, not at all. Not at all. And I think that's what is so inspiring about everything that's happening, especially in social media, is that I'm starting to see other people who felt like it didn't affect them now be affected. And so whether that means you live in the city and because of the curfews you can't get a car service after 8 p.m. and now you're affected. Now you're bothered. Now it's like if a parent, like when a parent is in the house and they have a kid and the kid cries and they got to get up and go like, now I got to see what's going on because I hear you crying now. And so I think that's what's happening to a lot of people. It's like, well, now that I have to acknowledge that this is affecting my day to day, let me see what the problem is. And then they
Right.
go and see, and they're like, oh, y'all
Oh,
been getting your ass beat for real, for
for real,
real.
for real. Right.
Oh,
For
I thought you was
decades,
just exaggerating. You know, like
centuries.
it's like a kid. Yeah, it's like when you see, like when a kid is like, no, there's a monster in my bed. You like, come on, stop. And then there's a real monster. You like, I feel
Right.
bad. I'm so sorry.
Right. There's no distractions. I think
None.
that's what made all of this is the perfect storm. It is the fact that we were quarantined because of the pandemic. It's the fact that people have nowhere to go. So you can't
Mhm.
ignore the truth that's been in front of you this whole time, but it can't be like, oh, I'm going on vacation or I'm doing this. Like, nah, you ain't doing nothing. Now you got to
Yeah.
sit and watch this hell, and it's awakening a lot of people, and I'm grateful for that. And also something that you said, which is super important, that people are finding out how they can help. I think the biggest issue I have, particularly with Black folks, is that we want everybody, particularly who's Black, to do everything, and that is not good. That ain't, you got to figure out what your strength is. Maybe all you
Mhm.
can, the best thing for you to do is donate money, because when you speak, you say ignorant, dumb stuff, or it's
Yes. And
whatever the case may be.
donating is immediate. Donating
Mhm.
is an immediate impact versus you trying to find the right angle in your apartment where the sun hits you just right so you can make a little video because you think you're about to say some super fly shit and then you get 14 likes. Like,
Right.
so yeah, that doesn't have the same impact as you giving $50 to an organization, and that is immediately making a difference.
Exactly. Exactly. All right, we're gonna talk about this a little bit more later, and especially how it impacts what you do as in your career. But we're gonna start from the beginning. So Chloe, is, for those who don't know, is a Brooklyn native. Grew up in Williamsburg around
Yes,
an ample amount of of Hasidic Jews, which
yes.
is not the
You gotta say Orthodox,
Orthodox. Sorry, Orthodox.
Hasidic Jews. Yes,
Orthodox Hasidic Jews, which is not the typical environment for young Black folks in Brooklyn, in particular, growing up.
yeah.
So, talk about that. How was it kind of growing up for you in that kind of neighborhood?
You know, I think for me, I didn't think that my neighborhood was different than other places that people lived until I had to go to elementary school and I didn't have the same like point of reference. And I think a lot of times we forget like how socialization really affects a kid's day to day life. And so
Mm-hmm.
I didn't have no ends. Like I didn't know what the songs were because my mother who was saved, sanctified, filled with the Holy Ghost. The only secular music we listened to was Al Jarreau and like Bobby McFerrin. And so I didn't know who the new rappers were. And this is like 1986 to
Mm-hmm.
what 89. So elementary school, it's like this is like the height of like the fresh hip hop. Like where people were like, "Yo, this is a real thing." Like,
Right. Mm-hmm.
oh my, I finally get to hear my voice. I see young kids that look like me on TV, beatboxing and like, so, like imagine a kid being like, my life is forever changed. Oh my gosh, they're just soaking up everything when it comes to like hip hop culture, from the sneakers to the ripped jeans to the flat tops, everything. And I come in there talking about Bobby McFerrin and Al Jarreau. So they
but
was like, get her out of here.
but I think that's cool though. Like, I mean, because I get, for you, you were completely detached from everything else that was going on.
Mm-hmm.
But if we're honest, in the 80s, even if you were, very much a part of or aware or connected to this thriving and this bubbling, hip hop culture, you knew very much who Al Jarreau and Bobby McFerrin was. Like, you
Yeah,
still.
but you didn't hear it every day. That's what I'm gonna say. Like it was once in a while, but like it was like that middle of the road mainstream pop Black person. Not
Mhm.
pop, but like popular culture pop Black person. And but there's a lot of like nuance, there's a lot of trust that you miss out on when you don't have those points of reference, because all kids do to relate is to talk about the shit that they like. And
Right.
so if you don't like the shit that they like, then already you at a disadvantage because there's no common ground. And so it was very hard for me to build relationships because I just didn't know a lot of the things. And then also, I was the only child. I grew up in a Jewish neighborhood. I didn't have a lot of Black and brown friends in my complex because it was a select group of us because it was a large apartment complex. And for like legal reasons to just say that it's open to the public, they have to keep a certain percentage of the
Yeah,
apartments available for like non-Jewish people.
of course. Yeah.
And so it's like 10% non-Jewish. So that is a handful of Black kids my age.
Right.
And I didn't really hang out like that because I was the only child. And so there's a lot of things that I just didn't understand. I didn't have anybody to like school me or rough me up, or I just came in there believing everything. And also, it was like perfect. Talk about a perfect perfect situation. It's like I was the tallest kid. I was the youngest kid because my birthday is December 28th, and that was before they did the September cutoff.
Right.
So if a kid is born after September, they gotta wait. And now it was like, no, you 4 years old. You was born in 1980. Go ahead, go to kindergarten. So I was the baby, the
Right.
biggest, had no cultural references, had nothing in common with them. My mother dressed me like a square. It was like a
Wow.
recipe for disaster. It was everything. I checked all the boxes.
Did did your parents ever explain to you why they chose to live there as opposed to in a neighborhood with more, predominantly Black folks?
My dad grew up in Indiana and he moved to New York when he was 17. So he only went to high school for like a year and a half. I
Hmm.
think it was a year. And my mother was born and raised in Bedside, Brooklyn. And when my dad moved here, he moved to Bushwick. And
Hmm.
they actually met. They met in college in Brooklyn. And so I think for them it was like kind of like a mark of like not success, but like a mark of like we're doing things to move out of the Black neighborhoods and then to move to a new apartment complex close to Manhattan, which is fancy. Growing up, it's like, oh, you live near Manhattan,
Right,
like,
right. That's where
so
the money
it was
was.
like, yeah. So close to Manhattan in Williamsburg, a very safe neighborhood. That was the thing that they were really concerned about was like safety because dealing with like drugs and abandoned buildings and vandalism, and people used to really get robbed like in New York, old New York, like you would get stuck up all the time. And
All the
so
time.
I think, yeah, all the time. So I think, it's funny because like when you think about like they don't do it anymore because it's dumb. But you remember all those movies in the 80s and 90s when it was a bad guy, he would just put like his finger in his
Yeah.
pocket and like point, and you just like, oh, he got a gun.
Right.
But like that's what it was. Like you just was like, okay, he has. If he doesn't, he may have a gun. Just here, run everything, and there just be
Right, right.
somebody with their fingers in like. But so it was like an issue of like safety too. They wanted a fresh start. My mother wanted some separation between I guess her and her family. Because she got
Mhm.
married at 19. My dad was 24, so it was like we want to be close but not too close.
Right.
And the neighborhood has served us well because it is a safe place. I did not witness a lot of the things that my colleagues or my peers experienced during the 80s and 90s. Like when that race riot was going on in Crown Heights, I lived in Williamsburg, but I lived with the other
Was
group,
that the not Tawana, but
Yusef
was the
Hawkins.
Yusuf Hawkins, right? Yeah.
hmm And so I just didn't have, but like this, I would say that my neighborhood allowed me to have a more sheltered childhood.
Hmm.
I'll say that. Like I saw things, I saw things, I would hear things, I would read things, but like firsthand experience, like I didn't have that shell shock experience.
But I would assume, could be wrong, I've had my fair share of run-ins with the Orthodox community,
Yeah.
um, that you experienced some sort of, racism or discrimination growing up, like if not on a daily basis, at
Mm,
least occasionally.
no, because my parents moved in fairly early when the complex opened up, and
Hmm.
so a lot of the families that are there have been there as long as my family has been there, and so they know me. And
Okay.
so when they know you, it's like they see you around because there's so few of us. When you see us, you know who we are.
Right.
And even though I haven't lived there in damn near 20 years, My parents still live there. When I go back, they like, hey, how you doing? Like even their kids was like, hi, neighbor. Like they just know.
Mhm.
But if you are not a part of that community, they are very suspicious. But I think that has more to do with their religious zealotry than it is to do with racism per se.
Oh
Because
yeah, I got
according to them, we all going to hell. So it's like,
you.
what you doing over here? This the promised land.
Right, right. I got you. I got you. In hindsight, looking back, kind of growing up in that environment, do you think a lot of that kind of helped to shape your comedic foundation as to like, developing a certain type of sense of
Hmm.
humor, because a lot of times when kids grow up, when they're kind of like I wouldn't say necessarily the outcast, but you're like the one very different, thing that exists amongst all these other commonalities, you start to develop certain things so you can survive. Even though, you're
Hmm.
saying like you weren't, being, targeted or whatever, but you develop certain things so, they accept you, even though physically you're clearly different than the rest of them.
Yeah. I would say probably when I first got into comedy, it never appealed to me as a serious thing. It was something that I was doing as a bridge to a new thing that I wanted to go into, which was going from being a journalist who did print media, magazines, or web. I wanted to be on camera. And so I took this class because I wanted to be fun and invigorating, and I wanted to be off the cuff and, really smart and quick. And that was my intention. And I ended up performing and I really enjoyed it, but it never was my intention. And so when I got into comedy, I wasn't working up to that goal. And I think what I realized once I got into it is that the reason why I think I connected with it is because of all those experiences. They made my skin thick,
Mm-hmm.
and there's a lot of rejection that comes in entertainment. There's a lot of bombing that happens when you get on stage and people just don't feel it. And so I feel like I've had enough like little daggers thrown at me that now I'm just like, all right, that's next. Like, it's not the end of the world. Like when you go through stuff, you're like, this is not the end of the world. Like I can just keep going. So I think it really serviced me well.
Yeah, I mean, I would just, just kind of think that that definitely kind of benefits you to going into that world of comedy, which, yes, can be very brutal. Well, before we
Hmm.
kind of really dig into your comedic career, we're gonna start at the beginning. So you started out, as you mentioned, as a journalist, right? So you wrote for Essence, The Source, King Magazine.
Hmm.
What else did you?
Vibe.
Vibe.
I was at Vibe. I was at um the Village Voice.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, and Hearst magazines. Yeah, I did. It was weird. It feels like so long ago. It's like a different world. It really does. It really feels like a completely different world, another lifetime. And I was a journalist for 10 years,
Mm-hmm.
and now I've been a comedian for 10 years. And so you think like I've
Yeah.
had two careers, and
Right.
I'm probably going to start another one because the world is changing. So
So what made you want to become a journalist in the first place? Where did you go to school to study
yeah.
journalism?
Well, what made me want to become a journalist was as a child because I was the only child and I lived in the secluded area of Williamsburg. I was an outside kid. I was home and my parents would leave me at home. I was a latchkey kid. And so during the summers, my mom would give me book reports because I'm like 7 or 8 and she's
Mm-hmm.
leaving me home by myself for a work day. And her and my dad had to go to work and she would say this week you have to read these books and then write a book report. So you're not gonna be sitting home watching TV all day, and you're just like, okay. And so that really just made me love reading, and I enjoyed reading a lot because I was the only child, and it was an escape, and it was, it allowed me to imagine worlds and just have that free flowing creativity. And so I always thought of myself as being like a creative writer, and I always excelled in language arts and English class. And then once I dealt with like my bullying and feeling like I was voiceless, and then learning about and TS11 learning about like Black History Month and Martin Luther King, and I think they showed us like they didn't show us roots, but they showed us something like that. I remember like seeing like hella black movies like this is Africa and these are African, like just learning a
At
lot
PS11?
at PS11.
I don't
Yeah,
remember that. Who?
It was, well, we had Miss Jones, you know, the black
No,
teacher.
I had Miss Jones for 2 years, and
Yeah.
she was black and strong. That's for damn
Yes.
sure. But I
But
also
well, you
I
know,
had Miss
I was in
McPherson for 2 years too. So
yeah. Well, when we was in PS11, that's when Nelson Mandela came out, and we made signs and went to
I
see
remember
him
that
drive
we went
down
over to
Fulton
Fulton
Street.
Street. I remember that.
Mhm.
Yes, I
Yeah,
remember that.
right there, St. James and Fulton.
Hmm.
And so because that, I kind of really latched onto that black identity, and seeing how I always saw, even early, I always saw how much we'd overcome,
Hmm.
and that made me want to kind of uphold that. And then also being bullied, I was like, well, I want to move my people forward, but also because I'm a bully, I mean, because I've been bullied, I also want to give a voice to the voiceless. And so I always thought about, like, you know, Martin Luther King and Malcolm X, and like all of these people who found a voice. And so I was like, I'm going to use my voice for to amplify other people, and I'm going to be a journalist, and I'm going to do the dirty work and report on the bad guys and follow the crime, and, like, you know, I'm going to be like, you know, Clark Kent out this bitch. Like, I'm gonna get everything on paper. And so that's kind of became like my mission,
Hmm.
my goal as a young kid. Like, probably by junior high school, once I had the words to understand like journalism and
Hmm.
full paper, I was like, oh, this is what I'm doing.
So you did that, and from what you've just said is a complete understanding of why you would even go down that road. But then, 10 years in, you make a pivot. Why do you make the pivot? Because, like you said, even when you did, you never, when you first started doing the comedy, it wasn't something that you took seriously. It's kind of like, oh, I'm gonna try this out, see what it is. It could be fun or whatever. But you
Mm-hmm.
clearly, something had to happen for you to make, to make that pivot. Because I went through that in my career. Start being in television and film, and then something happens. You get to that point, and you, even though I guess I mean I did take DJing seriously because I've been doing it for a while, but something happened that just like snapped,
Mm-hmm.
and I was like, yo, I'm out. This is where I need to be. This is what I want to do. What kind of happened with you in that?
Yeah. Well, it wasn't me. It was my decision. Kind of like, I took the comedy class when I was still at Vibe magazine. I believe I was still at Vibe magazine. And so when I did my graduation show, a lot of my coworkers came, and then maybe like a month or two after that, I was like, I really do like comedy. And then I got another job offer, and I was like, well, maybe this job will let me have the hours and flexibility to still do comedy because I think I like it. You know, it was kind of like, it was like I was dating comedy. You know, like it's like I think I like somebody, but I didn't think I was ready for this. Like, you know, you
Mm-hmm.
start like second guessing yourself, like start weighing all the options. But like, well, I do have fun and it makes me feel good, but I'm 29 years old. I can't be telling people I want to be a comedian. Like, that's not serious. So it was a lot
Right.
of that. And I think what kind of helped was the job that I had left Vibe for let me go, and then I went on unemployment. And so during that time of unemployment, I told myself, I was like, this is the last job that I want to have. Like, this is the last time I'm working for somebody
Mm-hmm.
in this capacity. And then I had always kind of like spoken into existence. I had said before that, I just remember telling somebody, I was like, you know what? Like, I just want to get paid to talk. Like, I don't know what that is. I just want to show up and people be like, what do you think? And then I get a check. And I didn't even think that was stand up comedy. And I think the reason why I was finally ready to give my opinion is because when you're bullied, you lose your voice. And then as a journalist, it's not about your voice, it's about seeing writing about what you see and talking to people and telling their story. And so it finally felt like I want to talk, like I have something I really want to say. And then, the, again, perfect combination, losing a job, going on unemployment, having more time. And then I just kind of got swept up into it. And then it's been 10 years. And now it feels like it makes perfect sense. But I also do feel like I think that that was a skill set that I needed to learn for whatever's coming next.
Yeah, I find that to be very true. I feel like there's a lot that we all go through in life, and clearly, when we're going through, we're unaware that these seeds are being planted or the foundations being set for what we're really supposed to be doing, what we're really supposed to be going. I mean, that's the entire basis of my DJ career. Like, things were happening that I just was completely unaware of, not ignoring, but just like, oh, this is whatever, and going
Mm-hmm.
through life the way I felt it's, doing things I should be doing. And then I look up and, 15 years later, It's like it's a whole nother lifetime ago, and people only know me
Yeah.
as one thing. And it's like, no,
Yeah.
it took me a while to get here and get to this point. Um, I remember when you started comedy because I remember I came to see you. You were at I think Caroline's. Was it Caroline's or
Probably. Yeah, probably.
it
I
was one of
mean,
those,
I've been,
like
I don't,
you were like amateur. It was one of those things like yeah, Nick, you got to sell tickets to
oh, oh, then it's Gotham. Then it had to be Gotham then.
Gotham. Then it was
Probably
Gotham. Yeah, it
Gotham
was.
or Comet. Yeah, on 23rd Street.
Yeah, I think it was Gotham. Yeah, it definitely was Gotham. I remember because you had to like it's one of those things like oh you want to be on, you got to sell
Oh
tickets.
yeah. It's like yeah, it's like when they don't do that anymore. I don't know what is the like what is like the hazing period for DJs now because it's not like you're not carrying crates, but like
Yeah, there isn't one anymore. Really, there isn't.
yeah, and
Unfortunately, there
so
isn't. Yeah.
but the equivalent of carrying crates for a comic is selling mad tickets to what we call a bringer show,
Yeah.
and the more people you bring, the more time you get. And
Yeah.
so you see, like, and and it's a lot of people for a minute. It ain't like one person 1 minute. It's like 20. It's like 20 people an extra minute.
Yeah, I remember that. I remember that vividly and thinking like, oh shit, like, okay, like Chloe's funny. Like, and it's different because as being friends and even our whole clique and everybody we used to hang out with and run with. It's like, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
people are funny amongst their friends. They might be, witty and you know, shoot something off and like everybody laughs and stuff like that. But being a stand-up comic is just completely a different animal. What is
Is
what is what is stand-up comedy to you? Like what if you could describe it for like the average person who will never be in that position, what is it like to be a stand-up comic?
um I would say it's the equivalent of like having to do a major presentation in front of your colleagues or people that don't really know you, and then you kill it. Like every point that you wanted to make, they received, they understood. Every little joke they got, like whatever they were thinking before, maybe you completely changed their mind and they're on your side, and you just brought so much enlightenment to them. And so that pretty much what is how I feel when I do stand up comedy, which is I may have a point of view that people don't agree with, or they may see me as a tall Black woman and they be like, I have nothing in common with her. And then by the time I'm done, it's like, oh my God, you're the best. And I think for me, it became more of like my way of making the world a better place. And I know
Mm.
it sounds really corny. I know people who are
No, it
not
doesn't. It
in
doesn't. I get
entertainment.
it. I get it.
No, you get it because you're a DJ, but
Yeah.
like people who don't perform in front of live audiences, they really don't get it because they think it's easy, and they don't realize that everything that we get when we on that stage, we work for. And so
Mhm.
it's not like people don't come to a comedy club and start laughing before the show. Like it's like you got to get it's a harder laugh out of every single body.
Elementary school was worse because I was chunky. Yeah, when you're a fat kid growing up, you got to go the extra mile to make friends. I was doing stuff like magic and taxes. I'd be on the playground like abracadabra. It's an audit. Let's play. I did get
And when you engage with masses of people, you start. I know I'm gonna sound crazy. You start to pick up energy, and as a DJ, you know it, and
Yeah.
you can
Yeah.
feel the energy shift in the room,
Mhm.
and you can feel when somebody was giving you negative energy or resisting, and they kind of like let go and go into the moment. And so when you have that experience on a nightly basis, you realize that like this is how I'm making the world a better place. That sounds so corny, I know.
No, it doesn't. Look, I mean, trust me. I get it completely. Like, and I say it all the time. And you brought up, you use a very key word is about energy. Like, as a DJ, it's all about connecting energy wise. Like, spiritually. Like, this is a communal event, and this is a spiritual experience, and we're connecting with each other through the music. We're connecting our energies via the music. I think with
Mhm.
you, it's through your storytelling because that's what a comic does. Like you're telling stories, and like you
Yeah.
said, like even for people who come to clubs, like they come to party and have a good time. However, them partying and having a good time is not on them. Like I have to provide that for them. People come to comedy clubs and they want to laugh, but they can't laugh on their own. Like you have to make them
No.
laugh.
Yeah.
And then sometimes you'll be in a room and there's people there who are just tough. It's they make it impossible for you to make them to laugh because they have whatever barriers up. They might be going through some shit. They don't know how to, let their guards down. They may, I'm sure you've been in rooms. They just may not like black people. They may not like women. They may not like black women. Whatever the case is, and you have to battle through all of that just to get them to laugh because that's what you're there to do, to get them to laugh. In
Yeah.
that, like, I'm sure why you do comedy has changed from why you started in the beginning, right? Because you clearly have more of an understanding of the craft and your
Hmm.
responsibility and purpose. Why are you doing stand-up comedy now?
Now I'm doing stand-up comedy because I've seen it firsthand where I'm able to convey a message or explain a situation, or give social commentary and criticism, and it's actually like change people's mind about it. And I think that if I can use my voice to help keep getting messages out there, and I don't go into the situation being like I'm gonna get everybody on my side. Like that's not, I'm not trying to win everybody over.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that because of the society that we live in, we as people don't engage in heated debate or just like uh, social commentary. Like we just don't engage on a philosophical level or on a personal level. We just don't have those meetings of the mind.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think me being a stand up and also a journalist and also just inquisitive, and I feel like I'm a very logical person. I feel like I can kind of like present something that people miss, or they thought they knew but they didn't really know. So it's just I like to help people formulate informed opinions.
And I'm sure, like at the end of your shows, like you've had moments where people came up to you and they thanked you in a way that was outside of like, oh, you were really funny, great job. But they thanked you because you kind of,
Mm-hmm.
brighten their day or you open up their mind to certain things. I know I had those moments when I've DJed. Like I had one time, I was DJing somewhere and this lady was like, yo, like, you killed it, but like you played this song and this is the song I played when I was going through chemotherapy and it helped me get through. And I was like, damn, like, you don't think about those things and then they happen and it's like, it's almost like a reminder that this is bigger than just, the surface definition of what you're doing.
Yeah. But that's the whole point of humanity. The whole point of humanity is to interact with other people, learn, grow, and develop. And so whenever you are blocking your interaction from learning from someone or teaching someone, you're just making everybody more miserable.
Right.
And a lot of times people don't have those types of professions where they can have that impact.
Mm-hmm.
And it kind of also becomes a little addictive. I mean, I'm not gonna lie, that instant gratification, that realization that you've made someone's day or someone's night, it can be a little bit of an ego boost. And
Mm-hmm.
you have to figure out how to manage that ego, because you never really, I mean, I don't want to say everybody, I'm saying I never really want to lose sight of what my intention is, which is to help inform and to help elevate and bring levity to a really crazy world that we live in. And that is what makes me feel good, is making other people feel good. But once you start, turning that around, then you have people who start doing things that's like very disingenuous. And that's what we're like seeing a lot right now, is like people who feel liberated enough to speak up and people who are worried about their money and they don't say anything. I never want to be the latter.
Yeah, no, there are those people who put their self interest above the interest of their own people, or people. Those are people I'm definitely not fans of, and I get it. You know what I'm saying? Like you do get in those moments when you're getting the accolades and you're getting the applause, and it's like, damn, like yo, I'm killing it, like I'm bad, whatever. But you
Yeah.
can't get caught up in that, because I always tell people, what makes me a great DJ has less to do with my skill set and more to do with the fact that I've been blessed with a gift. Like what you're
Mm-hmm.
getting from me doesn't come from me. I'm being
Oh
used.
yeah.
I'm being used to convey this gift. I'm being used to to work in this, you know, in this area, but it doesn't come from me. And that's the part that makes me great. You know what I'm saying? My stewardship towards that gift,
Yep.
it, you know, keeps to maintain that greatness, but it ain't got, you know, nothing to do with me. I mean, I may talk my shit every now and then, you know, like, you know, I'm a bad motherfucker, you know, whatever. But at the end of the day, I know what it is. I know what it is. I know that I've been blessed with a gift. This isn't like,
Yeah. And no,
it,
the hardest part is acknowledging that, and the
mm-hmm,
even harder part is to not squander it, because I think a lot of times people we know who have, you know, we went to school with gifted and talented kids, and a lot of them are not living in their excellence right now because
mm-hmm.
it's a lot. It's a lot to be blessed with a skill set or a talent, and then also want to improve upon it, because that means that you can't go out and hang out sometimes. You got to work, you got to cancel meetings, you got to cancel family, there's a lot of sacrifices that you give up in order to kind of perfect the gift that you were given.
A lot of people who are comics, a lot of, you know, the big name ones, people, you know, they said they knew from an early age that they wanted to be a comic. So their comedic heroes, you know, tend to be a long list. You got into this late. You know, who are some of your comedic inspirations and people that you look up to and have influenced you in your style of comedy?
Mm-hmm. I would say I always have two sets of answers for that, because I have people who I know everybody knows, and then I have people who I see night in and night out at all of the good clubs in the city who I think are just hilariously funny. But I would say mainstream names, definitely Dave Chappelle, Wanda Sykes. I would say old Chris Rock. I'm not really a fan of the new Chris Rock. I just think that, you know, people grow and what they talk about changes.
Yeah.
I also really enjoyed Don Rickles because he was fearless, and Joan Rivers, Mom's Mabley, of course. And I would say I always grew up as a kid really looking up to Whoopi Goldberg, even though she's not a classic or a standard stand-up comedian. But I remember watching her one woman show when she was on Broadway, because it came on HBO. I just remember it coming on, or maybe my parents had like the VHS tape of it, and I was just like enamored with it. And I was like, I wanna be that free. Like I remember being like, I want to be that creative. And so
James Van Gogh Museum, the ballet, and in the middle of this long ass list, I see this name that I think I recognize because it said the Anne Frank House, and I wondered, you know, if it was the same chick, you know. So I said, I'm gonna go check the pad out, you know. As I was perusing the area, I noticed a small staircase leading up to a big bookcase, and I'm into books, you know. I got a PhD in literature from Columbia, so I know you don't think I was born a junkie. Now I have an education, I got a PhD I can't do shit with, you know? So I stay high so I don't get mad.
So I think it was always planted in the back of my mind, and then it just came out later.
Have you been able to, clearly some of them you can't possibly have met, but are there any of the heroes, the people that you've mentioned, you've been able to kind of meet or talk with, or, you know, get advice from?
Yeah, I've definitely met and talked with Wanda Sykes. She was the executive producer of Last Comic Standing when I did it. I want to say, I don't remember what year it was. I'm terrible with years, but it was like season 8. And I was 3. I do remember I was 3 years into stand up at that point. And she and I didn't really talk during the show because I was a contestant, but after we kept in touch, and I've worked with her and her production company, and she's always been like, you know, someone that I knew if I like really needed help, if I not help, but if I like really needed like some real advice, then like, you know, like this, all right, this is the big one, like this is the big one. What am I gonna do? Like she would be like, all right, let's sit down and chat. So I've also opened for her at a comedy festival in Boston. So she's always been very nice, and she's the reason why I started working at the Comedy Cellar. And that night we were at dinner after the show in Boston, and someone that was with us was like, "Oh, when you're in New York City, do you perform at the Cellar?" And I was like, "Oh, I'm not past at the Cellar." And so, if you guys don't know, the Comedy Cellar is like the hardest club to get into in New York City, and it has 3 locations in New York City, and it's sold out every night, and they have like two or three shows at each location every night. It's like
Mhm.
a very well-oiled machine. And they recently opened up a room at the Rio in Vegas, and their shows were sold out every night. And so it's like the creme de la creme. It's like any marker, the biggest marker for any young comedian in New York City is to like work at the Cellar. And that's where all the big names go to drop in and just run a set. So you can be sitting there and you'll see Amy Schumer, John Mulaney, you see Dave Chappelle, Chris Rock, Aziz Ansari, like people just drop in. And when you work there, it's kind of like a seal of approval. And so when you work there and those people are there, if you're sitting at the table, they'll be more willing to talk with you because it's like you've met a bar.
Right.
And she, Wanda, heard that and she goes, "What, you don't work there?" She goes, "Okay, all right, we'll work on that." And then one thing leads to another. She made a phone call. I got an audition, and that was it.
That's amazing. I think it's amazing when established like big names recognize talent and younger artists who are very talented, but they don't have the weight of a name or even maybe necessarily the resume that can just easily open doors for them, and then they're willing to kind of just lend out a helping hand or whatever. Because I've experienced that a lot in the DJ well, let me not say that. I haven't experienced that a lot. I've had to kick quite a few doors off the hinges myself, but but there's been I've had moments where it's like the guys that I looked up to were like, "Yo, like, nah, you nice. We need to work, whatever." And I know for me, every now and then I have moments where it's like, "Yo, I cannot believe like this is my life." Because I remember when you used to send out Chloe used to send out these emails, these yearly emails, right, to the crew, just kind of like, "All right, what are your goals? What are your plans? What are you trying to do?" And then like a follow-up email, like, "All right, well, what did you get accomplished? What did you do?" And I think back, I mean, those are like BlackBerry days. And to think back on like how that would, how you did that and kind of to hold all of us accountable for what we said that we wanted to do or what we were about. Even still, a lot of our stories have changed, our goals have changed, whatever. But there's moments I'm sitting here and I'm just like, "Yo, I can't believe I have this phone number in my phone. Or I can't believe this person knows who I am. Or they reached out to me. Like, that's crazy." Do you have those moments often as well?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, just being a stand-up, there's moments when I'm at a show and I'm on stage and it's like a really good groove and like everything you're doing is just killing. And I'll have like this like existential moment and in my mind I'm like, I'm really doing this shit right now. Like this
Yeah.
is like and I'll still be in the middle of telling a joke. Like I'll be talking to someone and then like just I hear another voice be like, "Look at you on stage right now." And another time I'll look at people and be like, "Why the fuck are y'all here? Like y'all really want to be here every night?" Like, but it's like it's a weird dynamic because now we see because we're in the house that we really do need people. Like even though you don't want to acknowledge it, it's like our complete livelihood is contingent upon interacting with people,
Mm-hmm.
and I think we take it for granted because we do it every night. So when you work 6 nights a week, by like night 6 you on stage like, "Why y'all at this comedy show?" Like
Right. Yeah, it's
like this is, I wouldn't be here if I wasn't here.
I say the same thing about nightclubs. Like, I hate nightclub. The last place I would want to be is in a nightclub. If I wasn't DJing, there's no way you can catch me in a nightclub. So even when I'm DJing and I could be killing it, I'm just like this is what y'all want to do. Like, there's much cooler ways to like socialize and be out or whatever. But I get it because clearly I was once in that position where it's like, "Yo, I got to get to the club. I got to go out. I want to party. I want to, dance." I get it. But it's always interesting that we get to this point and we're like, "Yo, why do you want to do this?" What do you, this COVID has affected us like greatly, particularly performing artists, right? Because like you said, I think just the human spirit in general requires human connection. It requires for us to be in the same space, to touch, to see, to smell, to hear, all of that. It requires us to be in that. That's for our human spirit. Um, COVID has put a stop to that temporarily. For some of us, our for some of us, our crafts have allowed us to continue doing what we're doing, right? But it's different. It's different. It's difficult. So as a DJ, I'd much rather be in front of a room of people to experience that exchange of energy. Going live, right? Um, Going live, I get to still perform my service, and I get to see how people are reacting in the comments, but it's not the same. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-mm.
I get that I'm doing a great job and they're telling me I'm doing a great job, but it's not the same. Uh, it's not the same communication frequency that I'm used to. For a comic, you need to hear laughs, like an LOL or LMAO.
LMAO.
Yeah, none of that could remotely equate to what it is to be in a room and hear the actual laughs from people. What do you
Yeah.
do with yourself during this time if you cannot do that to, at best, substitute what you're not doing anymore?
Well, I have been doing live shows on Instagram, and I've also done some live streaming shows on multiple platforms.
Mm-hmm.
I did a versus post show called The Afterglow with some other amazing Black women, and so I have those interactions, and I do see the comments as well. And so I think when you're just having a conversation, you can still be engaging with the comments. But when you're doing like pre-written material where you know the setup and you know the punchline, and you kind of, when you're writing a joke, you're anticipating where the laugh will be.
Mm-hmm.
You can't, that it's too much of a delay for that reaction. And then the last thing you want to do is pause your cadence because you're trying to see if they are reacting, and do the people have the speaker on. So it's, you can't do the dance. You can't really do the dance. But I mean, I could definitely shine and thrive in conversational shows because it's a conversation at a slower pace. You're not worried about hitting the joke every couple seconds. So there's a way that I can still utilize my comedic voice without doing like classic setup punchline jokes.
Are you writing for? Well, this is kind of a couple questions, a two-part question. Have you ever written for shows? Like, have you written for, let's say, for, the Daily Show? They have writers, or the Jimmy Fallon. Have you ever done that? And are you writing? What is your writing style now? Because I know there are comics, for, very established comics that do have people that help them write. Is that something you have, or you just like everything that comes out is 100% Chloe?
I actually have not been writing comedic material this entire time. I had told myself, like, I realized probably, so I'm week, I want to say 12. I think it's like week 12 for New York City. So I started self-isolating pretty much like around March 15th, which sounds crazy.
Mm-hmm.
So it's been a while for me. And I had to admit, because I had just come out of promoting my book, which came out in January. And so I created my own book tour. So I was touring January, February, March. I was supposed to have some more dates, and I was supposed to go on vacation. And so I was supposed to go on vacation right before this happened. And I was really looking forward to it because I hadn't been on vacation and like out of the country in like maybe a year and a half. It's maybe like 2 years. So I was like geeked. And when you're ready for a vacation, like you just shut down mentally. You shut down. You just like, I don't want to do nothing. I don't want to talk to nobody.
Right.
And I had to cancel my vacation because of coronavirus.
Mm-hmm.
And so it took me several weeks to unwind from the book dropping, the tour, the cancellation of my vacation, to even come to terms with Corona really meant. Like, I was just so wound up, and I didn't have a chance to just relax because I'm in panic mode. Now I got to go food shopping and get everything under the sun and fill my freezer up. And how come I can't find any little mini freezers? Like, I'm stocking up for the end of days now. And so, like, the first couple weeks of being in the house was a lot of anxiety. It was a lot of just being stuck because you just don't know what to do. And so I didn't feel creative for like the first 5, 6 weeks of being in the house. And I had to be okay with that because I just had to tell myself, like, everybody's going through this. Nobody knows what the hell is going on. It's okay to be a bum. It's okay to sit on the couch and watch
Mm-hmm.
TV. It's okay to lose track of time. It's okay to just do some goofy shit, go for an hour walk. Like, it's okay.
Mm-hmm.
And it's the longest that I've allowed myself to kind of do nothing. And so more recently, I've gotten my creative juices flowing, and I've been really enthralled with live streaming and learning about doing visual stuff, still doing content on my pages, starting to have more conversations with folks that are about a little bit more serious things that I feel passionate about. So it took me a while to get to the point where I wanted to speak out or be seen, or, because it felt like so helpless. I just felt really helpless.
Let's talk about the book. The book, Fuck Your Diet, right?
Yeah.
Fuck Your Diet. It's so I've known you for a long time, and in conversations or whatever, you've had your battles with weight, your uh, not necessarily self-imposed insecurities. Is about just your size. You're being tall. You're being a big woman, and you've tried everything because I'm sure society has made you feel a certain way, and then you got to a point
Hmm.
where you was like, "Fuck your diet," and he
Yeah.
came up with this book. So let's talk about that. Let's talk about the turning point where you were like, "Nah, this, I'm no longer subscribing to." Um, Not that you necessarily did subscribe to America's Form of Beauty, but you allowed those other voices to kind of impact how you feel about yourself and coming to
Yeah.
this point with the
Yeah.
book.
I would say comedy really helped me get to this point. Um, I probably would have never put myself in a position to be in the limelight, and that's just not my personality. And it's weird because even though I'm a stand-up comedian now, I'm still not the type to want all the attention. Like, me. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
when we used to have parties, I'd be in a corner, like, or talking to the DJ because I dated a DJ, so I'd be talking to him, like, I'm like helping clean up. I'm getting garbage bags. I'm serving food. Like, I'm like, I need to be of use. I don't want to just be here like trying to get. It's a weird thing.
Right.
And so it never dawns on me to make myself the center of attention. And I think I don't know. It changes every week, honestly. Like, I don't know. It's really weird. I've been thinking a lot, and I just can't really like figure out what it is anymore. you
I
know.
mean, but what? All right, I'll pick up the book. What am I going to get from this book?
Okay.
Right.
So the book. Okay. So I do remember I started. Okay, we're gonna start here. You gotta really cut that part out because I was big nothing. All
All
right.
right, I got you.
I will say that stand-up comedy got me to the point where I could say something like "F your diet" because it was the first time where I had to stand on stage and people had to see me, and I needed to learn to become okay with that. Because
Mm-hmm.
if you're not okay with yourself on stage, they read that. People read that when we talk about energy, and so I didn't want to come across as being insecure. Even though I felt insecure, people always perceive me to be confident, and I think that has more to do with my height and anything else. So they see me tall and they feel like, just by body language, they're like, oh, she got her life together. And so it was always like, oh, you're so brave, you're so smart, you're so, and it's just like, okay. And even though I don't necessarily agree with those things, you just be like, all right, keep it moving. But then when you're on stage and people are like applauding you or cheering you on, at a certain point, you can't keep deflecting it and being like low self-esteem, this isn't real. Like, at a certain point, you have to be like, let me embrace this, let me receive this, and then that starts to like build you up. And so I think for me, I just had to really figure out what made me happy, because there's no way that I could get on stage and try to like make people feel good when I didn't feel good about myself.
Mm-hmm.
And then the other part of it is the aspect when it comes to like entertainment and moving to the point of being on camera and being seen. It's like I need to really love everything about myself because I don't want to be in a position where I see myself and I'm unhappy, you know, because that's being fake. Um, and then also because stand-up comedy, there is no beauty requirement. You know, if I was trying to be an actress, they may say, "Oh, you're not big enough to be big, or you're not small enough to be small," because that's how they typecast black bodies. It's like you need to be like rail thin or like, you know, big mama.
Right.
And so because comedy is like come as you are, that also just put me in a position where I was accepted. I was able to, you know, be myself, and still people accepted me. So it really, I would attribute the reason why I'm in a position to write this book now is because of stand-up comedy forcing me to get outside of my safety zone, forcing me to build up my self-esteem, and forcing me to just accept all my flaws, because in comedy, flaws are also what makes you unique.
So in the book, so I mean, if a person goes out and buys this book, what are they going to get from it? What are they going to learn about you? What are they going to learn
Yeah.
about themselves? Like, you know, what you going to get from the book?
So the book, basically, each chapter, what I do is I give a personal experience. And I do it in chronological order. So the book starts with me when I'm like my earliest food memories, which is, you know, staying or coming over to my grandmother's house, and she's Southern. So, you know, Southern grandmother cooking food in the 80s. It was no fast food. Everything was made from scratch, you know,
Mm-hmm.
you had to eat everything on your plate. So I just talk about my early food memories and what shaped my relationship with food. And then what I also do in each chapter is I give my personal experiences, and I also tie in facts and figures to show like where we were in America or what contributes to how we eat. So, for example, elementary school, I started gaining weight because I would eat school lunch. And Ronald Reagan, at the time, he cut the school lunch budget by $1.46 billion. And when he did that, they changed the restrictions. So food in the 80s in schools became really bad. That's when we got a lot of soy, a lot of tofu, a lot of mystery meat, a lot of carbs, you know, cutting on portions, or just, you know, the contract for milk. That's why everybody has to drink milk, because it's a contract to keep
Mm-hmm.
dairy farmers in business. So it's like so many things that you learn that happen, and just legislation that shapes how we eat in this country. And for me, that was kind of like gratifying, because for so long you're always taught like, oh, you shouldn't just eat this or don't eat that, or, and it's like, well, I actually have no control over a lot of the things that I'm being offered, because it's a political thing, or it's a finance thing, it's a greedy corporation thing. And so it kind of let me let out a sigh of relief, because a lot of times I think when you're striving for the perfect body, you put a lot of pressure on yourself,
Mm-hmm.
and you feel like you're crazy. Like, people look at you like, what's wrong with you? Why can't you lose 40 pounds? And you're just like, it's easy. I didn't know it was easy.
Yeah, those are insane, silly ass questions for people to ask. Like, why can't you do this? Why can't you do this? Why can't you do that?
Yeah.
You know, I can.
And
Yeah.
everybody's body is different. And so I really wanted to tell my story, because I realized that I'm not alone in my experience. And a lot of times we like to think that we're the only one that this crazy stuff happens to.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, I felt like I kind of like, you know, cracked the matrix a little bit. And I was just like, listen, y'all, it's not that bad. Like,
Mm-hmm.
you know, like, it's like, you know, when a person jumps out the window and everybody gasps, and then you hear them be like, it's not bad, I'm good. And you're like, oh, okay, let's jump out the window. Like, I was like, I jumped out the window. Let me show you it's not that bad.
Right. Well, I'm proud of you for being able to do that. I know it's been a journey for you, but to do that takes a lot of courage, and so I appreciate you for that. So in this book, clearly you get, you know, like you said, you give a bunch of personal examples. I've seen your show a couple of times. How much or how important is it that you incorporate your personal experiences into your comedy? Because you see a lot of comics, you know, out here who are funny, but they're kind of generically, you know, applying their opinion on just random stuff, you know. But
Mm-hmm.
other, you know, there's certain comics, their thing is like, nah, I'm going to I'm going to make you laugh at my experiences. How important
Yeah.
is that to you?
Well, when I first started stand up, it was about all that generic stuff because you really don't even know how to really write a joke, but you just know what you think is funny.
Mm-hmm.
And it's easier to do something general because more people will agree with it versus being like something super personal. Because when you start talking about like personal stuff, you really have to craft the joke because you gotta paint the scene, you gotta lay out the characters, you gotta like let people know what your point of view is so they know what your stance is. Like there's so much more building up that you have to do when you do personal jokes, and I think that, and I know that it takes a lot more skill. But once you're able to craft those jokes and share those stories, to me, for me personally, it's just much more gratifying because I also feel like as a Black woman, a lot of times Black women don't get to share a voice that isn't viewed as angry or confrontational or stereotypical, because we don't control how we're portrayed in media. And
Mm-hmm.
so I really appreciate the fact that I can stand up and tell my experience and kind of be a different representation than we're kind of used to.
How how difficult is it just being a Black woman in comedy? I mean, because just in my mind, I'm just kind of thinking right now, if I could probably rattle off and they'll all be on one hand the amount of like super successful, established Black female comics. Like you said, there was Moms
Mm-hmm.
Mabley, there's Marsha Warfield, there's Whoopi Goldberg, there's Wanda Sykes, and now we have Tiffany Haddish, like
Mm-hmm.
the superstars of it. Though that's
Yeah.
five. I did all that on one hand. I might be missing a couple, but I think that's pretty much it. How, like, what is it like being a Black woman in comedy? What are like some of the things that you kind of experience?
Yeah. Well, when you talk about like that level of success, those women that you just named, that level of success means that you have successfully crossed over to the mainstream. And I think when you are deciding what type of comedian you want to be, you need to decide, unfortunately, what audience that you're going to kind of not cater to, but what audience is it that you are striving to stand before, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And it's a hard decision because a part of you or part of me, it's like, I want to be black, 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 and I want to be in front of my black ass people, and I want us
Mm-hmm.
to ride this out and have fun together. And then another part of me is like, well, I may not have the same shared experiences with some black people, so am I supposed to make up those experiences so I
Mm-hmm.
can like kind of cater to them or pander to them, or do I like stand in who I am and just deal with a more diverse audience because my experience appeals to all different types of people? And when I say that, that's just like the fancy way of being like, I didn't grow up with roaches, but am I going to start telling roaches jokes because this
Right.
particular show of black folks, they really respond to roach jokes? Like it's like
Right.
it's almost kind of like the reverse sellout. It's
Mm-hmm.
like, yeah, you sell out for white people, but then you also can sell out for black people too. Um, and so that's why I think it's really hard for a black woman to reach that certain level of success. And then also because of just the inherent racism that there is in entertainment, it's always just one. It's always one black person. It's
Mm-hmm.
never a gang. It's never here are the top 5 black women comedians of the year. It's like, here's the list of funny women and one of them is black.
Right.
And so it's always that tokenism. And so it just takes a lot to break through to that side, that level of success. Um, but I think for me, the hardest thing about being a woman comedian is realizing that I don't have to take on the responsibility of representing all black people and all women. And that's a fine balance that you have to figure out. What is it that you want to do? Like, what is it that you want to talk about? It shouldn't be what people are expecting me to talk about, but it's like, what do I give a fuck about? Because I have to tell these jokes.
Yeah, that's always tough. It's always a tough thing because I know even for me as a DJ, like I've created my own lane. I've
Mhm.
carved out that lane, and it took me a long time to do it, even though, for years people were trying to put me in a box. I'm a black kid from Brooklyn, so you're this DJ, right? You play hip hop and R&B, you play reggae, you play
Mhm.
soca, a little bit of house, a little bit of old school, and
Yeah.
like that's what you do, right? And early on in my career, that was very much me, like because this is what I knew. I was like, yeah, And then as I got older and more exposed, it's like, no, wait a minute, I can play all this other stuff that I like. I didn't know this existed. I didn't know that. And then you still have to fight that battle. Whereas, like, when you go places, people expect you to be a certain way because you are black,
Mhm.
because you
Mhm.
check off this
Yeah.
box. They expect you to be this way, and then when you're not, it's like, yo, who is this person?
Listen, some of my most difficult experiences performing has been in front of a room full of black people,
Mm-hmm.
and that hurts. Like that stings because it's just like a part of you was like, can we all just get along? And
Right.
the other part is like, I just gotta take this L. Like you just, it's not one black fits all, and you just have to be okay with that.
Yeah. One quick question I wanted to go back to with the book. How has because I know you said you had a tour going and then you had to cancel,
Hmm.
dates because of quarantine with COVID. How is
Yeah.
this, what have you done and put in place to kind of counteract that? And how are the sales? Are you doing it right? Or are they not, are you accepted the fact that they may not, you're
Yeah.
not going to do the numbers because of this climate that we're in?
Well, I'm very realistic, and I went into this situation being like, I know I'm not on television every night. Like I know that my fan base is smaller than other people in my position, and so I was realistic. I mean, of course, there's always that like glimmer of hope of being like, what if this just like flies off the shelves? What if this is like the top of everybody's list? And my book got very, very good reviews. I think my book
Mhm.
got very good reviews. I do believe that. I mean, I know for a fact that the coronavirus kind of put a damper in my marketing plan of like going out, being out, doing shows, seeing people, having book signings. But on the flip side, because people were in the house and
Mhm.
everybody's eating pattern and diet pattern is thrown off, and there's a lot of guilt about gaining weight and what does that mean. I was able to have conversations in different spaces about body acceptance, all of the things that I hope people walk away with when they read my book. So it's like a lot of body acceptance, a lot of forgiving yourself, understanding eating patterns, understanding what food culture really is, understanding, growing up in like a food desert or a food swamp. What does that mean?
Mhm.
How a poor diet as a kid because of economic hardships, how having a poor diet manifests into adult illnesses. And so when you talk about COVID and the large numbers of Black and Brown people who passed away, we kept hearing pre-existing conditions. And so a part of the conversation that I would have when I would get hired for seminars via Zoom, conferences, all that stuff. And when they would hire me, it was to have this conversation with a lot of college students that do a lot of public speaking at colleges. And so you have a group of young adults who are moving back home with their family. It's like very stressful situations. And so I was able to use my book as a tool and have conversations. And I do believe that that helped word of mouth that started to help with a new group of people who may not have come across me before. But now that we in this uprising, don't nobody give a fuck about
You
gaining
know,
weight. Nobody
right.
cares. There's bigger fish to fry. So now I feel dumb even like trying to promote shit now because I mean like I know y'all
Yeah.
protesting, but so I just like, and the other good thing is hopefully the world is still spinning because in January the paperback version of my book comes out, so I have another
Okay.
chance to do another way. So I haven't given up. I'm just taking the time out.
So before I let you go, this is the loop. So I like to
Mhm.
ask my guests at the end of every show two particular questions. In the beginning, it was very much just about like hip hop, like who's your top five MCs and this, that, and the third. But I have, a diverse collection of guests. So I'm going to try to ask these two questions as it pertains to what it is that they do. So the first question is, Who are your top 5 dead or alive stand-up comedians?
Mm-hmm.
And the second question is, if you can pick one comedian that you can listen to, or at least maybe even one stand-up special, it could be, that you could listen to on loop all day, every day, who would that be?
Okay.
So those are the 2 questions.
All right. So my top 5 dead or alive stand-up comedians would be I would say, because I also want to be realistic, so I need to say people whose careers I was alive to witness, because I think a lot of times we like romanticize people who died way long before it. Like, I wasn't sitting at my house listening to Red Fox records, so like I just need to be real. I would say the people who have influenced me, Whoopi Goldberg, top 5. Like I know people think of her as like just a host on a View, but her comedic, like her comedic comedy work, like when she does characters and get like out of this world. Like one of my favorite things is when she was on the Actor Studio with James Lipton, and she did this character where she was disabled, and she like was talking regular, and she just transitioned into the disabled person, like changed her voice, her body, everything. It was like freaky as hell, like, but good. So she's so super talented. So Whoopi Goldberg for sure. Dave Chappelle, Wanda Sykes. I really enjoy this comedian, a woman named Maria Bamford. She's a white woman. She's an ally for sure. She's quirky and unique, but like super deadpan, like super. She be throwing some blows, but you don't realize it because her voice is really light, but she be saying some like real shit. So that's 4. And who else? I'm missing somebody that's like not super big. And I would say Martin Lawrence, because I grew up watching Def Comedy Jam.
Okay.
And then also seeing his comedy work on Martin is just like probably hands down one of the funniest leading men Black sitcom characters of my lifetime. I mean, Cosby was good, but he was a dad, and so there was a level of like maturity in his character on the Cosby Show. But Martin was a fool, like, and it worked. It wasn't like, oh, he's acting out. It's like every time that Martin was a fool, it like fit the story. It didn't feel weird. It just was like an elevated sense of reality.
Also think with Martin is the first time that we saw hip hop. We saw comedy in the context of hip hop. I think prior to that, because hip hop is infiltrated in almost everything, right? So, we didn't, Allen Iverson was the world's introduction of a professional athlete in the context of hip hop. Martin was that for comedy. He was the first time we saw hip hop. He represented the culture in his comedy. It's interesting that you said his name, because for me, I think clearly he's one of the greatest hosts of all time. Like his ability to host a show, absolutely amazing, and his comedic acting is absolutely amazing. His clearly just off the top of the head, kind of like ad-libbing on his show. That wasn't on the script. Like he was a genius.
And he was physical too. That's the other thing. He was very physical. Yeah.
I just feel like he was better at that than a stand-up. I thought You So Crazy was amazing, and then after that, I just felt like there was a bit of a dip. But his everything else he did maintained the same level. But
for sure, he's always I mean, he's gotten older, so of course your like personality shifts a little bit. But when he was at his heyday, like he was always a scene stealer in everything that he was in.
Yep.
One of my favorite movies is Life, with Martin and Eddie Murphy, because Martin is so subtle in that role, but he's still so funny. And it's just like when you can do big and small and still like light up a screen, I think that It's and also I mean I definitely said I think I said Eddie Murphy. I think I said Eddie
You
Murphy,
definitely did not say Eddie Murphy, but
but you know what? That's fine. I'm gonna tell you why that's fine because
okay.
Eddie Murphy was 27 on his last stand-up special, and I might have been 4.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
I think that's what I meant. Like I wanted to give real context for my list because it's people who I saw that impacted me. Eddie Murphy was just already a star.
Mhm,
And then when it comes to like the stand up special or comedian that I could listen to and die laughing every single time, hands down, Patrice O'Neill.
mhm.
That special elephant in the room is from beginning to end nonstop laughs and poignant and political. He talked about racism. He talked about his issues as a kid growing up. Like it was personal. It was satirical. It was observational. It was just Elephant in the Room is one of my favorite stand-up specials. And the reason why I didn't name him as my top 5 is because he died right when he was about to like explode, and
Oh
so
yeah,
I
he
don't
was right
know.
on the cusp. He was about to
Yeah,
blow. He is. I mean, I've seen a lot of his stuff. He was brilliant. Like he was an amazing stand-up comic. And like you said, the stuff that I've watched, I think I laughed from the first time he said, from the minute he said hello to the minute he said goodnight. It was just nonstop laughs.
yeah, yeah. And even the thing about him is like, even though he was saying like some really like sexist, foul stuff, it still was funny.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's like, to me, that's like the sign of a really good comedian, which is like, you know what they're saying is dead wrong. Like you
Right.
feel it in your bones, but it's just way too funny to not laugh.
He's brilliant. It's so sad that we lost him so early in his life and in his career.
Yeah.
Um, before I let you go, is there anything that you want to promote, get out there, what you got going on?
Yeah. You can follow me on Instagram. It's Chloe underscore Hilliard. Also the same on Twitter as well. Chloe underscore Hilliard. That's Hilliard. And I'm doing content, releasing it there. You can go to fyourdiet.com to check out my book. And I have a Patreon page, and it is patreon.com/Chloe Hilliard. I release my Social Misfit podcast there with videos as well. So you can see me. You can see me for free. You can pay me. Give me a little love donation because I'm unemployed.
We are unemployed. Ain't no joke. We are unemployed.
Yeah, you ain't got no job, man.
Nope. Nope. Well, Chloe, thank you so much for your time. You are a dear friend for a long time, so I appreciate you coming on the
Yes,
show and
thank
chopping it up with me. I appreciate it.
absolutely. Thank you for having me, and I'm so proud of all that you've accomplished, and I can't wait to see what we can create when we're out of these circumstances. So, viva la revolution!
Yeah, we gonna represent one way or another. Uh,
Yes.
Thank you guys so much for watching the loop. Thank you to my guest Chloe Hilliard for being on here. Good friend. Make sure you follow her and check her out and cop that book. Fuck Your Diet. I almost feel like a nigga should be at the end of it. It should be like "fuck your diet, nigga." But I don't know if
Yeah,
that will help you.
and they,
I don't know if
yeah,
that'll help
then
your
all,
sales at all.
it was not gonna help myself.
But yeah, so guys, make sure you go check that out. Until next time, make sure you stay in the loop. Peace.